Hello and welcome to the lecture on CSS Precedence. Precedence is basically understanding how the rules will be applied onto the HTML pages. In what sequence these rules will be applied and which get the higher priority to apply that rule onto the HTML. Okay, we have looked about so many selectors, we have looked at inline, external and all those type of CSS that we can apply onto HTML page. Now we'll take a step back and understand when we apply all these rules, which gets the higher precedence, means which get executed and applied onto the HTML tags. Okay, so we'll look at various examples of how the CSS rules apply onto the HTML tags. So for that we'll create one folder and I'll call it CSS rules. We'll create a file, precedence. Let's quickly open this up in the brackets. Right, so I'm going to copy paste some of the CSS rules here, then we'll understand how the precedence will work. So I've copy pasted some of the CSS rules and simple plain HTML tags. We have seen through all these examples of how to write CSS and how to use them. So let's understand what is the CSS here and how the order of preference works. Okay, so we have for H1 we have blue color, for P we have applied green color, for P and H1 both we have applied color red. Okay, so H1 have blue, P has green. When you write P comma H1 means same rule applied for both of them. I made it red. So let's see whether the head and P will have blue, green or red. Then for div I have red. Then for ID selectors I have used color blue, that is text blue. Text green is a class selector. Then for div text blue means when you say div and text blue, I have made it light blue. So let's see when you use and combine all this CSS together, how they behaves and which one gets executed first. Okay, so let's do the div tag first. So when say div ID, I'm gonna say text blue, that's nothing but the ID class selector. Then we will have a class text green. Okay, so we have both the colors, text blue and text green, and all the text here like CSS rules, which is more specific, has more precedence. Okay, we will add a BR here. ID has more precedence than class. Yeah, okay, so let's view this file. Okay, here we have applied this rule to the div tag blue and text green, but you can see the light blue has been applied. The div text blue, the div text blue has more preference. This has more preference over these two. Obviously the ID has more preference than the class, but if you attach it with a div tag and then for that ID, for div for that ID, this rule is applied. So it is CSS rule which has more specific, okay, has more precedence. Even though the text blue, this blue was not applied, the light blue was applied. All right, so let's look one more example. All right, so let's look at the H1 and P tags. So for H1 and P tags we have these three conditions: H1 blue, P green and P and H is red. Okay, you can see both of them are red. The reason behind it is more specific. P and H you are saying has to be red in color, right? That's why they are in red in color, right? The individual definitions plus a combination of tags definition has more preference than the individual ones. Okay, so understand these differences. We'll create one more file and then we'll understand it. We'll create one more file out of it. We'll say inheritance. We'll see how the inheritance work. So in this we will remove all this. Okay, and we will have a body. So for body we'll do coloring. We'll say color is white. Okay, and background color is red. Right, now this has been applied for everything because that's the body tag. Then now you will overwrite. Okay, H1, okay, we'll say text decoration underline. So we have the underline here, and we say background color, change for h1, right? You say black. Okay, so this is basically you're overriding the styles that has been applied. So first the body was applied, then the h1 was applied, and now let's do a black screen. For black screen, we say background color is black. So now what we can do is we can just try to understand the concepts, how it actually works. Okay, let's write a p class black screen. Okay, okay, and let's write an anchor tag here. Okay, and whatever you're gonna write it here, this is a test. Okay, this is basically the black screen is applied even to the internal tags. You can see even the anchor tag is getting that black screen. Okay, this is basically the hierarchy. So whatever the parent is having the class, it is applied onto the child tags as well. Okay, and also if you apply the same rule onto the parent element, all the child elements can override it, and also if they don't override, they by default get the parent element. Like paragraph text, we haven't override the paragraph text style, so it took the style from the body and applied it for himself. So this is basically a concept of inheritance, whereas the paragraph is inheriting the styles of body. Here the p tag is overriding the parent's style, right? It is overriding the black screen. So this is how you can basically play around with having inheritance. Like you can define one common style you want for everybody, then you can override whatever styles you want for specific individual tags. Okay, and remember, when you override that specific, the more specific will be applied to the rule, right? h1 has more specific rule, so h1 conditions will be applied onto the CSS styling. All right, so let's look one more example, and let's call it last. Let's do the third one, and this is called as last win rules. Okay, whatever is a rule that is in the last will get higher preference. Okay, let's do that example. So I'm removing all the styles, I'm removing all the text. Let's understand it. So we'll define some styles here. We'll say body has color red. Similarly, the color red we want to put for h1 and p tag. So all the h1 p body should be in red in color. Okay, and then we are saying we create one more id selector and of text red, and we'll say color is red. Then we'll do a class okay, and what we can do is we will now do h1 and h1 dot text red. Okay, so what we are trying to do is we are trying all the ways to make body h and p as red in color. Okay, then we'll look at which conditions wins first. Okay, you remember about the inline style sheet, so we'll do an inline style sheet and we'll say color is green, right? Then we'll also apply the class text red. Then we'll also apply id text red, and we'll say headings. So can you guess? Okay, you cannot see the output, so can you guess which of the condition is been applied to headings? That's what we are talking about. Which is the last condition that has been applied onto the h1 tag? Well, that's the green, not the red. We have even done so many ways of applying this red onto h1. We have defined the ID and the class specific to h1. We even did the body as red, h1 as red, but the last condition that's applied is the inline style sheet. So remember this, whenever you have any CSS anywhere written, if you want to have a CSS specific at that moment of time and you want that to apply onto your HTML tag, you can go ahead with the inline style sheet. All right, so let's do a last example, and that is called as important rule. Okay, let's open this up. In the same condition, let's say you want h1 to be red in color, right? You want this red to be applied to your conditions and you don't want anybody to override it. You don't want anyone in line to override it. What you can simply do is you can go to the h1 and you can say important, right? Exclamatory mark, and you are saying a word called important. So when you say important, nobody can inherit it anymore. You try to inherit also, the important one gets executed. This is one of the way to make sure nobody inherits your property or nobody overrides your property. Okay, you can mention this anywhere you want, it will still be applied onto your tag, right? So this is basically called as important rule. Basically you do an exclamatory mark and then you use a word called important. So wherever you apply this, that rule cannot be overridden. Okay, and that rule will always be get executed. Okay, so these are the 4 types that we have seen. Precedence we have seen, inheritance we have seen, when we have seen the last win rule, that's basically the inline style sheet. Then we have looked at important rule, which basically means you cannot override it. Okay, it's always get executed. So these are some of the things that you should know when you work with CSS. How is the precedence works, how inheritance works, and how to make a logical decision. When you're writing the CSS, you should know, when I write this, will it be applied or will it be overridden by something else? You will always have this challenge wherein you're writing CSS but it's not getting executed. That's basically these 4 concepts will help you understand how to make sure your CSS will be applied onto your HTML tags, and even though other CSS will be available for it to apply, yours get the most higher preference to apply onto the HTML tags. Well, that's all about precedence and CSS rules, and I'll see you in the next one.